enter the growth phase. And I believe that the growth rate in India is going to be exponential.
Two narratives of Indian story which need to be brought center stage.
Every week.
Hello everyone, welcome back. You're watching Beyond World is One. This is another edition of World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the global curve. I'm Shivan Chandra.
And I'm Him Kaur Suraya. On the show today, as the Israel-Hamas war rages on, Israel has mobilized tens of thousands of troops along the border. In the latest, Israel's defense minister told ground troops to be ready to enter the Gaza Strip, saying that we will now see the Gaza Strip from the inside. Now, what will be the practical implications of this? We'll explore this on the show today.
The ground offensive, while that also remains our top focus, we also talk about President Joe Biden, who delivered a speech in the United States' response to the war in Ukraine and Israel-Hamas war. This as his administration prepares to call on Congress to approve tens of billions of dollars in military aid for the two embattled nations. We will get you all the details on the show, but first, the headlines.
Israel's defense minister Yoav Gallant tells troops on Gaza border that order to enter Hamas-run territory will come soon. Says you now will see Gaza from afar. You now see Gaza from afar. Soon you will see it from the inside.
Hamas and Putin represent different threats but want to completely annihilate neighboring democracies, says US President Joe Biden in televised address from the Oval Office as he pushes for more aid for Ukraine and Israel.
US troops come under attack in Iraq and Syria from suspected Iran-backed militias in escalation that threatens to pull global powers into the Israel-Hamas conflict.
Dozens of Canadian diplomats leave India amid row over murder of Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Move follows India's ultimatum to Canada to withdraw dozens of its diplomatic staff.
Two-time champions India beat Bangladesh by 7 wickets to register their fourth straight win at the ODI World Cup. Virat Kohli slams his 48th century and is now just one short of Sachin Tendulkar's all-time record. Our top focus: after carrying out relentless airstrikes on the Gaza Strip, Israel's defense minister Yoav Gallant has told his men to get ready for a ground offensive.
Well, Israel has been preparing for this, and the same was echoed by Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu when he met the soldiers, calling on them to fight till victory is secured. Now, Israel has massed tens of thousands of troops along the border with Gaza following the October 7th cross-border massacre by Hamas militants. Meeting Israel's infantry soldiers on the Gaza border, Israel's defense minister Yoav Gallant urged the troops to be organized and ready to enter the Gaza Strip. He, however, did not mention when this invasion would begin.
תהיו מוכנים, הפקודה תגיע. תודה רבה חבר'ה, סומכים עליכם בהצלחה ואנחנו עוד ניפגש, ומי שרואה עכשיו את עזה מרחוק יראה אותה מבפנים. אני מבטיח לכם. בהצלחה.
Meanwhile, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has also met his combat soldiers at the Gaza border. He reaffirmed the troops that the entire state of Israel stands behind them and vowed to emerge victorious after the war.
אני פה עם הלוחמים של גולני, הם באים מכל חלקי הארץ, הם לחמו כמו אריות, אם ילחמו כמו אריות, אתם מוכנים להמשך? כן! אנחנו הולכים לנצח בכל העוצמה. אתם מוכנים? כן! כל עם ישראל עומד מאחוריכם, ואנחנו ניתן את המכה הקשה לאויבים שלנו כדי שנשיג ניצחון לניצחון. מוכנים? כן!
Meanwhile, as Israel continues to pound Gaza, new satellite images show a number of people taking shelter in schools and hospitals around Gaza City.
Now, as the war drags on with no peace in sight, the concerns over its expansion remain. The conflict it's already spilled into the wider West Asian region, and many Iran-backed militant groups are seen to be involved. And the heavy US presence in the region and its involvement in the wars is in their crosshairs.
In the latest, the Pentagon says that a US Navy warship intercepted 3 cruise missiles and several drones launched by the Iran-backed Houthi movement from Yemen. Though the Pentagon said it has no certainty of the target of the drones and missiles, but they were potentially bound towards Israel.
To that end, the crew of the guided missile destroyer USS Carney, operating in the northern Red Sea earlier today, shot down 3 land attack cruise missiles and several drones that were launched by Houthi forces in Yemen. This action was a demonstration of the integrated air and missile defense architecture that we have built in the Middle East and that we are prepared to utilize whenever necessary to protect our partners and our interests in this important region. There were no casualties to U.S. forces and none that we know of to any civilians on the ground.
And while US President Joe Biden was in Israel on Wednesday, US military forces in Iraq were targeted in 2 separate drone attacks, with one causing injuries to a small number of troops. The Islamic resistance in Iraq, again an Iran-backed group, claimed the responsibility for the attacks.
Meanwhile, tensions are already soaring in northern Israeli front between Israel and Iran-backed Hezbollah group, which is based in Lebanon. Now, in the latest, the Lebanese army has alleged that a journalist was killed by Israeli gunfire on Thursday in a southern Lebanon border area.
On the other hand, Israel's military said earlier that its forces had targeted Hezbollah infrastructure and struck 3 people who attempted to launch anti-tank missiles at Israel. On the Lebanese army's allegations, Israel says it's investigating the matter.
Meanwhile, Israel's military is evacuating 28 communities near the northern border with Lebanon because of escalating tensions, and Saudi Arabia has also advised all its nationals in Lebanon to leave the country immediately. Now, the US president says militant group Hamas and Russia are both out to annihilate democracies in an impassioned speech to the nation from the Oval Office.
Joe Biden, seeking re-election in 2024, is preparing to push Congress for a massive $100 billion package that includes funding for Israel as well as Ukraine. Presidents traditionally reserve speech from the solemn setting of the Oval Office for moments of key national significance.
Fresh from a whirlwind trip to Israel, the 80-year-old Democrat is going all out now to win over war-weary voters and hardline Republicans. Biden stated the stakes are too great for Washington to abandon Ukraine and Israel, and added that the U.S. remains a global guardian for freedom. He said, and I'm quoting here, "America is a beacon to the world still."
Hamas and Putin represent different threats, but they share this in common. They both want to completely annihilate a neighboring democracy, completely annihilate it. Hamas' stated purpose for existing is the destruction of the state of Israel and the murder of Jewish people. Hamas does not represent the Palestinian people. Hamas uses Palestinian civilians as human shields, and innocent Palestinian families are suffering greatly because of them.
Washington is backing Israel in its war with Hamas, even as the Russia-Ukraine war shows no signs of an endgame. Tying together 2 conflicts an ocean away from the United States is a bid by Biden to frame them as part of a bigger struggle to shape the world order and protect Americans at home. Biden had earlier mentioned a global inflection point that's bigger than party or politics.
Hard-right Republicans and a growing number of voters are strongly opposed to adding to the nearly $44 billion in security assistance that U.S. has committed to Ukraine since Moscow launched its invasion in 2022.
Biden hopes to break the logjam by hitching it to funding for Israel, Taiwan and the troubled southern border with Mexico. recasting the trio of issues as part of the same overriding task of ensuring U.S. security. The U.S. President exhorted the Congress to approve urgent military support for Israel and Ukraine, saying the aid would boost U.S. security for generations.
He said while he was in Tel Aviv that he would ask Congress for an unprecedented package for Israel's defense this week. And as per reports, the package will include $10 billion in emergency assistance for Israel and $60 billion for Ukraine. The U.S. president spoke to Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky hours before this speech.
Biden has also been striking a statesman-like tone on the Israel-Hamas war with an eye on voters, where there is strong support for Israel, even if left-wing Democrats oppose his stance.
Now, in Tel Aviv on Wednesday, the U.S. president backed Israel as it gears up for a ground invasion of Gaza after Hamas attacks killed more than 1,400 people. But he also brokered a deal to get some aid through Egypt into the Gaza Strip. The threat of a wider West Asian conflict, meanwhile, looms in the background. U.S. has already moved 2 aircraft carriers into the eastern Mediterranean to deter Iran or Lebanon's Hezbollah, which is backed by Iran, both allies of Hamas, from getting involved.
Now, the United States' involvement plays a major role, and aid, that has been a major concern as well. And for the latest on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani has sent us this report from New York. Take a look.
President Biden, in his address from the Oval Office, the second since becoming president, made a direct appeal to the American people, saying supporting Ukraine and Israel now will help America for generations to come. He made this speech just one day before he's expected to make an urgent request to Congress for north of $100 billion, not only for aid to Israel and Ukraine, but also Taiwan and money for the U.S.-Mexico border. During his speech, time and again, the president compared Hamas and Vladimir Putin's Russia with one another, saying while they do pose different threats, they have one thing in common. They want to annihilate a neighboring democracy. The president said that supporting Ukraine and Israel is a matter of national security. The question is whether he was able to articulate that to the American people effectively. During his speech, the president, who's clearly concerned about hate here in America, said that Jewish families and Muslims should not feel hate and discrimination against them. As the president was delivering his speech, it was reported that U.S. forces were attacked in Iraq. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.
All right. Now, to discuss things further, for more on this, we are being also joined by Jacob Olidor. He's live from Washington, D.C. Mr. Olidor is a director of research at the Jewish Institute for National Security of America, Gemender Center for Defense and Strategy. So, welcome to World DNA.
Thank you so much for having me.
Mr. Olidor, let's start right off with there. Biden has asked for $100 billion. That includes, military support for Israel and Ukraine, saying it would boost U.S. security for generations. Now, talk to us about the implications here and what is U.S. aiming to achieve for generations?
It's a good question. You know, the speech was a little bit of a departure from President Biden's very strong and consistent rhetoric since October 7th, since the horrendous attack by Hamas against Israel. This speech, of course, is trying to make a case that both wars are connected, and they have connectivity to them. But fundamentally, they're 2 different issues. And while it's important to make a case for aid to Ukraine, the threat is very different than that posed by Iran. Ultimately, it's Iran directing Hamas in the attack against Israel. So I think that was probably the biggest thing missing from a speech that actually, in my view, kind of touched on maybe too many topics. But the one that was missing, it received a passing mention, was Iran. And that was really the policy change and the focus that should have been the emphasis on his remarks when he was in Israel. It should have been emphasized a bit more today, and certainly against the backdrop of Iran-backed militias targeting U.S. bases and Hezbollah obviously mobilizing protesters.
So also let's talk about what's happening in the region on ground. In fact, Israeli Defense Minister said they'll be seeing Gaza from inside. What do you make of these comments, given that it's already been several days since Israel, of course, initially said it suggested a ground offensive?
Well, of course, I mean, as you mentioned, I mean, everybody is sort of waiting, and the ground offensive was initially expected last week. It's been delayed. We've also heard statements from IDF spokespersons that it won't resemble what people expect it to look like. So I think, we're also all in the same position, sort of waiting to see what happens. I think it's fair to say that Gaza is just a highly complex environment. It'll be a very, very fraught operation, not to mention the hostage dimension. And so certainly we'll be waiting to watch this very, very tenuous situation unfold.
Jacob, I just want to go back to what you mentioned earlier, that, this was like President Biden's speech. It kind of linked the two wars, Israel and Ukraine, what is happening in Israel with Hamas, and of course between Ukraine and Russia. Talk to us a little bit more about that, if you could elaborate further on what US gains from this speech, or at least what the Biden administration seems to gain from these kind of connections that they're trying to form with the speech.
I think what it gains fundamentally, I mean, I think it's an important case to make. I mean, I think that the support for Ukraine is a righteous cause. It's an important case. It's defending sovereignty of a state. And obviously, President Biden who has yet to make a real clear policy statement about Ukraine, this might have been the closest he's come to it. And obviously, it's on the eve of a very substantial aid package to Ukraine. That's leaving aside kind of the way in which he's implemented the policy. But it's a very distinct issue from the war that Israel faces right now, which is a defensive war, which is actually being waged by one of several Iranian proxies in the region. That, I would say, is the thing missing from the president's comments throughout since early October, is that it's not just Israel and Hamas. I mean, you cannot truly capture accurately what's happening on the ground if you don't take into account the Iranian hand in coordinating, supporting, training Hamas, without which it would not have been successful in its attack. And certainly you're seeing that with escalatory rhetoric and actions on the northern border and elsewhere in the region. And so I think so long as that focus, that explicit recognition of Iran's role, which has been corroborated in several media reports throughout the last few weeks, so long as that's not the case, even that the important military deterrent and support that we've provided, that will be limited in its effect.
Right, sir, absolutely. Also, 2 missiles were believed to be fired towards Israel from Yemen recently, while Israel's fight with Hezbollah continues in the north. Now, this has been a major question as well, and diplomatic overtures, they've come with the aim of also trying to contain this war and stop it from spilling into a wider regional conflict. Is this no longer just the Israel versus Hamas war? What's next, in your opinion?
I think it's bound to, and I've written this as well, and JINSA has written daily numerous research projects, which you can find on our website, jinsa.org. But, I've written actually on the day of the Hamas attack that this risks escalating into a regional conflict depending on the actions of the United States. And so I understand that the administration is trying very hard to contain it to Israel and Hamas in Gaza. But incidentally, the way to do that is actually to address the root cause of everything, which is Iran. And so long as Iran is not implicated directly, it will feel free to advance its destructive agenda across the region, as we're seeing happen today.
All right. Thank you so much, Jacob Olidor, for joining in and sharing all your insights on this. Pleasure talking to you. That was Mr. Olidor, Director of Research at the JINSA's Jemunda Center for Defense and Strategy, joining in on World Again.
Thank you very much.
Now, to join the fleet of U.S. military equipment, the Pentagon now plans to send 2 Iron Dome missile defense systems to Israel in its fight with Hamas.
U.S. had previously purchased the 2 Iron Dome missiles from Israel and will now send them back to join the Israeli military to defend itself against inbound missiles.
Now, the Pentagon spokesperson further added that other artillery ammunition alongside critical equipment will also be flown over to Israel in the following days.
And with respect to U.S. support to Israel, the first shipments of military aid, including munitions, began arriving in Israel last week and continue to arrive on a near-daily basis. This assistance is comprised of capabilities requested by Israel to include precision-guided munitions, such as joint direct attack munitions, small-diameter bombs, 155mm artillery ammunition, and other categories of critical equipment. In addition, Iron Dome interceptors from stocks that the United States has in country have been quickly provided to Israel. And in the days ahead, we'll be flowing additional Iron Dome interceptors so that Israel has the capabilities they need to sustain their Iron Dome defense systems and protect their citizens and cities from rocket attacks.
The White House on Monday said it expected to fulfill additional security requests from Israel as quickly as possible. And President Biden promised replenishment of interceptors used by Israel's Iron Dome missile defense system as well as ammunition, in addition to redoubling the U.S. military presence in the region. In August 2022, Israel said Iron Dome interceptor had shot down at least 97% of rockets coming in from militants based in the Gaza Strip. It had engaged during a weekend surge of Gaza fighting.
Now, apart from deployment of Iron Dome missile defense system, America's first new shipment of armored vehicles arrived at Ben Gurion International Airport on Thursday. The armored vehicles will join the Israeli Defense Forces and are aimed to replace the Israeli military cars damaged in the fighting against Hamas, confirmed a ministry spokesperson. And this shipment comes a day after U.S. President traveled to Israel to offer support in the aftermath of the Hamas attacks. The president pledged $100 million in new funding for humanitarian aid in Gaza and a West Bank, and said he'd asked Congress for unprecedented aid to boost Israel's fight with Hamas.
The United States stands with you in defense of that freedom.
The U.S. Department of State has issued a rare worldwide caution travel advisory telling Americans to be on alert everywhere they go overseas.
This due to increased tensions and potential for terror attacks as Israel's war with Hamas rages on. The notice was issued on Thursday. It advises American citizens abroad to stay alert in locations frequented by tourists.
Now, to enroll in the State Department's Smart Traveler Enrollment Program, to receive information and alerts and make it easier to locate them in an emergency overseas. This is what has been done. Now, the issuance of the worldwide caution alert is a significant message and protests that have erupted throughout West Asia in response to the Israel-Hamas war, with many demonstrators targeting U.S. diplomatic compounds. Now, there has been widespread anti-America protests in West Asia that included a 24-hour siege of the American embassy in Beirut.
In the past week, the U.S. State Department has raised the travel advisory for Lebanon and Israel to the highest level. It has also authorized non-emergency U.S. government personnel and family members to depart from the respective countries. The anti-American protests were also witnessed in Turkey, Adana and Istanbul. While outside the Israeli embassy in Jordan's Amman, protesters burned U.S. flags and held up signs denigrating President Biden.
In Iraq, the American military managed to intercept 2 drone strikes targeted towards Al-Assad airbase, and a bomb threat was reported at the U.S. embassy in Buenos Aires as well.
The last time the alert was issued was back in 2022 after the killing of Al-Qaeda leader Ayman al-Zawahiri. At the time, the U.S. officials warned that supporters of Al-Qaeda or its affiliated terrorist organizations may seek to attack U.S. facilities, personnel or citizens.
Cases rising.
Moving on now, a new video obtained from a dash cam shows heavily armed Hamas militants firing at festival goers at the site of the Nature Party Music Festival.
These people were among the first targets of the militants' surprise attack, which took place on the 7th of October. The Hamas militants can be seen aiming their weapons and shooting at fleeing festival goers, all while urging each other to save ammunition. The location of the videos was verified by road signs and road layouts, which matched and verified drone footage filmed at the same location and satellite imagery.
The same cars are also visible in the verified drone footage showing the aftermath of the site. Thousands attended the Trans Music Festival near Kibbutz Reim, close to Gaza, from which Hamas launched its attack, killing at least 260 people and taking around 250 hostage. And with that, it's time now for a short break.
Don't go anywhere. Of course, World DNA continues after the break as well. Amid a dispute over the murder of Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar, Canada has now withdrawn 41 of its diplomats from India. We will get you all the details right after the break.
Also on the other side, India has once again expressed its opposition to China's Belt and Road Initiative, further emphasizing the impact of this infrastructure program on participating countries. Don't go anywhere. We'll get you all the details on the other side.
Israel woke up to a barrage of thousands of rockets fired from the Gaza Strip.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
Hostilities have broken out between Israel and Palestine, and the tensions that had been gathering steam over the course of the last several weeks and months.
The siren has gone off. I don't know if you can hear in the background what's going on. I'm going into the shelter now. So it's a very, very serious situation here across Israel. It's a state of emergency.
The United States stands with Israel.
Well, we are starting this broadcast with a developing story from West Asia, where Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant says Hamas has launched a war against the state of Israel.
It's easy to tell you a flat story. It's easy to show you what's happening around the world. We do the difficult part.
This weapon has been banned, but the US, Ukraine and Russia do not find the bombs problematic.
We also tell you why what's happening.
New drug is making a difference in the fight against Alzheimer's. This medicine helps slow down a patient's cognitive decline.
We look beyond the text. We give you context.
Is China preparing for a war in the Himalayas? And tonight, we come to you with some proof.
Hypocrisy is stunning.
Do leaders mean what they say? Do they ever say what they mean? To find out how real news affects you, your decisions.
Just when Iran took one step in the right direction, its moral police is planning to drag it further back. And once again, the victim will be women.
Watch Gravitas.
Welcome and thanks for tuning in.
We don't impose our views.
Did India threaten to ban Twitter? Either that or Jack Dorsey is lying to you.
That is Gravitas. We let life breathe through our show. Gravitas, the informed show for an intelligent audience.
Hello, welcome to This World. Vladimir Amelyan joins us from Kiev, and he is currently on the front line fighting Russian troops.
We believe that the world should be ruled by democracies.
I was interviewing you on television a couple of weeks back.
That's right.
And you said, if you really want to understand Jerusalem, why don't you come here and see it?
And you came?
Here I am.
Mass shooting after mass shooting after mass shooting. Why this cannot be fixed?
There are 425 million guns in the United States, which is more than the population.
The problem here is Trump has been able to make the argument that this is a political prosecution and that he's being singled out unfairly.
Defend our nation. You are saying we could have a cure for cancer.
We'll have treatments for many cancers in this decade, and they're going to come from India.
Downside is that it could potentially wipe us out. But let's start with the upside first.
The upsides are absolutely enormous. The potential uses of this are almost unlimited.
I only discovered AutoGPTs about a week ago and started writing about them. And after I started writing about them, Jeff Bezos followed me on Twitter and all kinds of crazy amounts of people have been contacting us.
The show where we get you the week's biggest...
Welcome back to World DNA. Thank you so much for staying with us. We'll continue to bring you all the updates. A look at the headlines first.
Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant tells troops on Gaza border that order to enter Hamas-run territory will come soon. Says you now see Gaza from afar. Soon you will see it from the inside.
Hamas and Putin represent different threats but want to completely annihilate neighboring democracy, says US President Joe Biden in televised address from Oval Office as he pushes for more aid for Ukraine and Israel.
US troops come under attack in Iraq and Syria from suspected Iran-backed militias in escalation that threatens to pull global powers into Israel-Hamas conflict.
Dozens of Canadian diplomats leave India amid row over murder of Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Move follows India's ultimatum to Canada to withdraw dozens of its diplomatic staff.
Two-time champions, India beat Bangladesh by 7 wickets to register their 4th straight win at the ODI World Cup. Virat Kohli slams his 48th century and is now just one short of Sachin Tendulkar's all-time record.
Now, amid the ongoing dispute over the murder of Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar, Canada has now withdrawn 41 of its diplomats from India.
Canadian Foreign Minister Melanie Joly made this announcement, adding that Ottawa will not take any retaliatory steps here.
A unilateral revocation of diplomatic privileges and immunities is contrary to international law. It is a clear violation of the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. And threatening to do so is unreasonable and escalatory.
She further said that Canada will continue to defend international law which applies to all nations and will continue to engage with India.
Relations between India and Canada have dipped to historic lows since Prime Minister Justin Trudeau last month publicly linked Indian intelligence to the killing of Nijjar without providing any proof. Now, Nijjar, who advocated secession from India, was wanted by Indian authorities for terrorism and conspiracy to commit murder. New Delhi has dismissed Trudeau's suspicions on its agents being linked to the murder of Nijjar as absurd.
Around 2 million Canadians, which is around 5% of the overall population, belong to the Indian heritage. India is by far Canada's largest source of global students, making up for roughly 40% of study permit holders.
Canada's immigration minister also said that the diplomats' departure meant that Canada would have to cut the number of embassy staff dealing with immigration. He said that despite this, visa application centers in India would not be affected as they are operated by third-party contractors. India has once again expressed its opposition to China's Belt and Road Initiative, further emphasizing the impact of this infrastructure program on participating countries. Now, during a media briefing, the spokesperson for India's External Affairs Ministry, Arindam Bagchi, highlighted the cooperation between India and the Maldives.
The cooperation is particularly in areas of security and development. This, he said, is based on jointly addressing shared challenges and priorities. Further, in response to questions about the BRI forum hosted by China and the comments made by the Maldives, presidential representative endorsing the initiative, Bagchi reiterated India's well-known and consistent position on the BRI.
India has concerns about the BRI's lack of respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity. Bagchi also mentioned that unlike in the past, India did not receive an invitation to this year's Belt and Road Forum. India has opted to stay out of the Belt and Road Initiative. India believes the China-Pakistan economic corridor runs across parts of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, a region. Meanwhile, the Taliban administration wished to formally join the BRI Mega Infrastructure Initiative. The acting Commerce Minister of the administration also said that it will send a technical team to China for further talks.
در برنامه‌هایی که چین داره از جمله سیپک است و جمله بیارای است و راههای مستقیم خود افغانستان است و راهی که ما را وصل میکنه از طریق تاجیکستان.
Even though no other nation formally recognizes Taliban since they took over Afghanistan in 2021, Beijing has tried to develop relations with its administration. Moving on, Niger's junta said it had foiled an escape attempt by ousted President Mohamed Bazoum. Bazoum has been imprisoned by the military since the July coup.
We've been covering the coup events very extensively right here on World DNA. Now, the escape bid of Bazoum failed and the main actors and some of the accomplices were arrested. The interim authorities said that Bazoum and his family and some of the security forces were involved in the escape. Junta spokesperson Abdurrahmane did not say where they were being held now.
An investigation has been launched. The escape plan had involved Bazoum getting into a hideout on the outskirts of the capital Niamey and then flying out on helicopters belonging to a foreign power towards Nigeria. Bazoum has refused to resign since the July 26th coup. Until now, he had been held at his residence in the heart of the presidential palace along with his wife Aziza and son Salim. In September, Bazoum's lawyers said he filed a case with the Court of Economic Community of the West African States against those who deposed him. They also said that they were taking his case to the UN Human Rights Council.
Niger's coup was one of the 5 that has swept West Africa's Central Sahel region in 3 years. Although Niger has recently enjoyed its longest democratic rule since independence, there has been a constant threat of coups. The coup attempt exposed the country's deep political fissures. The current coup plotters have blamed rising insecurity and a lack of economic growth. They have said that the intervention was necessary to avoid the gradual and inevitable demise of the country.
Niger is battling an offensive in the west by militants crossing over from Mali and Burkina Faso. Remember, France has supported ousted President Bazoum since the coup and has also called for his release. Niger's junta has in the past accused France of deploying troops in West African countries as part of preparations for possible military intervention in Niger. The departure of French forces from Niger, it has been a key demand of the junta. In the latest on Thursday, the first group of French soldiers ordered out of Niger by its post-coup military rulers arrived in the capital of neighboring Chad.
All right, let's start off with some stories coming in from the tech sector. It's about Meta. We're going to start with that. Social media users will soon be able to use the broadcast channels feature on Facebook and Messenger.
Other Meta platforms such as Instagram and WhatsApp already have this feature. Mark Zuckerberg, the founder and CEO of Meta, announced the extension of the broadcast channels feature in a Facebook post. So the question is, what is a broadcast channel? It's a broadcast service that enables users to receive private updates from celebrities, sports teams and thought leaders. In other words, this one-way broadcast tool provides a private way to receive updates from people and organizations that matter to the users.
Admins can use channels to send text messages, photos, videos, stickers, you name it. And they can also run polls similar to WhatsApp chat. You will be able to use emojis to react to messages in a channel.
Meta recently expanded WhatsApp channels to over 150 countries. The social media giant's announcement comes at a time when Telegram's broadcast channel feature, it's assumed an outsized role in the conflict between Israel and Hamas. Telegram has become one of the primary means through which the Palestinian Islamist group communicates with the world. And after Apple, Google is now joining the list of global tech giants setting up their production unit in India. You'll soon be able to buy made in India Google phones.
They're all coming towards India now, and we're seeing it happen. Google's parent company, Alphabet, has announced it will soon be manufacturing its flagship model, Google Pixel, and it will happen in India. The announcement was made in Google's India-specific annual event called Google for India 2023. Google has announced the Made in India Pixel 8 will go on sale in 2024. Google's senior vice president, Rick, said that India is a priority market for Pixel smartphones. Having a production line in India will help Google cut import duties. It will also make Pixel phones more affordable for Indian consumers.
Now, in line with the country's Make in India push, Google added that it will partner with international and domestic manufacturers in India. The US-based company is in talks with homegrown contract manufacturers like Dixon, Lava and Bharat FIH to produce its smartphones locally.
Setting up of a Google production unit in India will not only lead to more job opportunities, but it will also lead to increased investment opportunities. Currently, India is assembling approximately 1.8 times more smartphones than Vietnam and about a quarter of China's output. China, India and Vietnam are the top 3 smartphone manufacturers in the world. Meanwhile, Elon Musk is in talks with the Indian government to set up Tesla's car production in the country as well. Over to business next. Israel's currency, the shekel, has plunged to an 8-year low, prompting swift action for the country's central bank.
Now, Citigroup Incorporate has reversed its forecast for a 0.75% rate cut, stating that the central bank is likely to keep the benchmark interest rate unchanged. The shekel's weakness is a growing concern among economists and traders, but the central bank's focus is clear: stabilize the markets and provide maximum certainty to the economy and the public.
Now, the situation has evolved rapidly due to ongoing hostilities in the region. The central bank's deputy governor, Andrew Abir, emphasized the priority of stabilizing markets, and the bank has pledged to sell up to $30 billion from its reserves to support the currency.
This move has contributed to calming the foreign exchange market, which in turn has had a stabilizing effect on other markets. Forward rate agreements used to wager on future borrowing costs saw a significant increase after falling last week, reflecting a shift in market sentiment as well.
While there was initial speculation about a potential interest rate cut to mitigate the impact of a prolonged conflict on Israel's economy, the central bank's latest announcements suggest otherwise. Policymakers appear more inclined to prioritize financial stability and certainty over a change in the monetary regime. This could mean that rate cuts may not be on the immediate horizon. Instead, the bank is likely to consider fiscal adjustments to support the economy.
Now, they say the road to our present is laid in our past. As the Israel-Hamas war continues, people around the world are worried about its impact on oil prices as well as the larger economy.
Well, their fears are not unfounded. In fact, they are deeply rooted in recent history. Let us take you back to October 1973. Israel and a coalition of Arab countries were locked in another war, which began on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of Jews. Western nations led by the US decided to come in Israel's support, but this irked the oil-rich Arab countries, most of whom were part of the OPEC group of suppliers. They decided to impose an oil embargo on several Western nations, and subsequently a series of oil cuts led to skyrocketing prices.
A barrel of oil traded for around $2.9. It rose to fourfolds to $11.65 per barrel by January 1974. And this led to a rise in fuel prices in the United States from an average of 39 cents per gallon before the crisis to 53 cents in 1974. The oil cuts lead to energy shortage across the Western world, and it shook the global economy. The crisis only ended in March 1974 when the embargo was lifted.
The crisis had a long-term impact on the West as the embargo ended its 3-decade-long period of prosperity. But the West's loss was a massive gain for the oil-producing Gulf nations. Until then, dominated by industrial powerhouses, they suddenly became the masters of the quote-unquote black gold. The rising prices brought massive amounts of money to the oil-rich West Asia region, giving rise to the term petrodollar. For the first time, oil became the focal point of the global political economy. And interestingly, the push for alternate energy sources too can be traced to this crisis. All in all, the dynamic shift in West Asia can still be felt worldwide in 2023.
On to news now from the world of sport. Two-time champions India are on a roll at the ODI World Cup. The men in blue defeated Bangladesh by 7 wickets to register their 4th straight win.
Well, it's Virat Kohli once again who mastered the chase and took the hosts home with an unbeaten century. Bangladesh skipper Shakib Al Hasan missed the match due to a niggle, and Najmul Hussain Shanto led the side instead. Bangladesh elected to bat first. Openers Tanzid Hassan and Liton Das started cautiously in the power play and made just 19 runs. Indian all-rounder Hardik Pandya injured his ankle in the 9th over and was taken to hospital for scans. Hassan completed his maiden 50 in the 14th over but was dismissed in the very next over by Kuldeep Yadav.
Das scored 68, and when he went back to the pavilion, Bangladesh had 137 runs on the board. Veterans Mahmudullah and Mushfiqur Rahim played vital knocks lower down the order to take Bangladesh to 256 for 8 after 50 overs. Rohit Sharma continued his red-hot form and got off the mark with a boundary. He, along with Shubman Gill, made 63 runs in the first 10 overs. Sharma fell too short of his 50 in the 13th over with 88 runs on the board. Gill completed his 50 but departed soon after. Virat Kohli continued the momentum and smashed a 48-ball 50.
India were cruising towards the target with just 86 runs needed in 23 overs. Kohli then switched gears, eyeing his maiden 100 in a World Cup chase. KL Rahul played the second fiddle as Kohli reached the milestone with a 6, and India won the match with 51 balls to spare. Now, one of Indian cricket's special venues hosts its first game of the ICC ODI World Cup today.
There is plenty on the line as 5-time champions Australia take on Pakistan, who've been literally feeling the heat over the last week. Australia was staring down the barrel after defeats to India and South Africa, but did not panic.
Scrapping when the going is tough is part of Australian cricket's DNA, and it was the skipper Pat Cummins who dragged them back into the game after Sri Lanka raced out to 125 for no loss. The Lankans eventually folded for 209 and Australia knocked over those runs in 35.2 overs. But there are still problems aplenty with Stephen Smith and David Warner struggling for runs. Australia need them to fire as they have to win at least 5 of their remaining 6 games to reach the semi-final stage.
You know, especially at a venue like here in Bangalore, I dare say it's going to be high scoring, smaller field. Pitch is always really good here. So, batting super important. I think the way the guys started last game really set the tone. Mitchie and Davey up front from the first over taking the game on. That's what we want from our players. They're working really hard. They're doing all the right things. So I'm sure plenty of runs are around the corner.
Now, Pakistan haven't played since the loss to India last Saturday in Ahmedabad. They got hammered in that game, and their recovery took a hit when a viral infection swept through the camp. A few players, including Abdullah Shafiq and Shaheen Shah Afridi, were confined to their rooms, but the worst is over, and only backup batter Salman Agha is currently sidelined.
Backup opener Fakhar Zaman is also out with a knee problem, and that leaves Pakistan with 13 fit men to choose from. Our Pakistan bureau chief Anas Malik has been tracking the team, and this is what he has picked up yet.
Pakistan are all set to play their fourth game in the ICC Men's Cricket World Cup against Australia tomorrow in Bengaluru. And the mood in Pakistan camp is a bit of an upbeat. This comes after that defeat with India that had quite of an impact, and after that the team had to take a mandatory session with the psychiatrist. A team dinner was held with the psychiatrist. Pakistan team has also been hit by a viral flu and a fever. We saw players like Mohammad Haris, Abdullah Shafiq, Shaheen Shah Afridi, Usama Amir being down with this viral flu and infection, but most of the players have now recovered. They were made to undertake dengue and COVID tests as well, which came back negative. Only Mohammad Haris continues to be under fever. The reason he has not joined the team's optional training sessions either, but the mood in Pakistan camp is that they look forward to the game and looking forward to make it to the semi-finals, with the hope of the fans that they will be able to clinch the trophy as well of the very World Cup. Now, it is pertinent to mention that the impact of the loss from India was quite severe, and that is the reason the team management had made a mandatory session with the psychiatrist. In fact, a team dinner was held in order to overcome whatever the shortcomings were with the psychiatrist, so that the boys, the team, could perform better in the games ahead. Anas Malik in Islamabad, Pakistan for WION World is One.
Now, 1996 World Cup winning coach and former Australian Test cricketer Dave Watmore sets up the match in Bengaluru with sports editor Digvijay Singh Deo. Listen in.
The wicket that they're playing on in Bangalore, I think, is a perfect surface for some of these batsmen who haven't got runs. Rizwan has, and the captain Babar Azam's got some, but a couple of those Aussie guys are a little bit short of runs, and they would be really.
In fact, because you mentioned that, let's bring up Australia's numbers, especially the batting numbers, because the sense we get is if Australia need to mount a run and get to the semi-finals, they need the likes of David Warner and the likes of Stephen Smith to get runs. Let's look at this. There's nothing worth writing home about. I mean, Labuschagne's got 113, a very average strike rate. Warner 65, Smith 65. English got those runs in the last game. Mitch Marsh got a 50 odd in one game. But listen, I mean, it's exactly here. This is that engine room of the Australian team, and they need runs, or else they'll struggle.
And that's why they've only won one. So, but I reckon they'll be really looking forward to this game. You know, as I said, they've won the last one. They've turned the corner. They're going to be playing on a beautiful surface, I think, not sight unseen, but from what I know in the past, it's a really good deck.
In fact, Pat Cummins said in his pre-match conference, this is going to be lots of runs.
Yes, it's a small outfield.
It's a lovely ground.
Yeah, it's a small boundary, fast outfield, beautiful wicket, and it's going to be the battle of who's got the most power and also who's more able to restrict. So your bowling attack also will be needing to step up.
It's time now to take a look at what's happening in the world of entertainment. Indian actor Junior NTR has been invited to join the Academy's prestigious Actors Branch. The invitation comes after the actor's film RRR achieved global success. Helmed by S.S. Rajamouli, the movie performed well at the box office, won big at both the Oscars and the Golden Globes, among other award ceremonies.
Ahead of the release of the much-awaited memoir, Britney Spears has made a comeback on the big screen. The singer's cult classic movie Crossroads is screening in selected theatres for 2 nights. For those unaware, the film has been unavailable for the past few years, but the diva decided to push the film back into cinemas.
At a recent Las Vegas concert, singer Adele announced that she quit drinking. The singer said, and I'm quoting here, I was literally borderline alcoholic for quite a lot of my 20s. I miss it so much, I cut out caffeine, so enjoy a whiskey sour. I'm very, very jealous. And with that, we call it a wrap on this edition of World DNA.
Stay tuned, keep watching WION World as One. News and updates continue on the other side.
India's global voice.
Israel woke up to a barrage of thousands of rockets fired from the Gaza Strip.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
Hostilities have broken out between Israel and Palestine, and the tensions that had been gathering steam over the course of the last several weeks and months.
The siren has gone off. I don't know if you can hear in the background what's going on. I'm going into the shelter now. So it's a very, very serious situation here across Israel. It's a state of emergency.
The United States stands with Israel.
Well, we are starting this broadcast with a developing story from West Asia, where Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant says Hamas has launched a war against the state of Israel.
It's easy to tell you a flat story. It's easy to show you what's happening around the world. We do the difficult part.
This weapon has been banned, but the US, Ukraine and Russia do not find the bombs problematic.
We also tell you why what's happening.
A new drug is making a difference in the fight against Alzheimer's. This medicine helps slow down a patient's cognitive decline.
We look beyond the text. We give you context.
Is China preparing for a war in the Himalayas? And tonight, we come to you with some proof.
Hypocrisy is stunning.
Do leaders mean what they say? Do they ever say what they mean? To find out how real news affects you, your decisions.
Just when Iran took one step in the right direction, its moral police is planning to drag it further back. And once again, the victim will be women.
Watch Gravitas.
And thanks for tuning in.
We don't impose our views.
Did India threaten to ban Twitter? Either that or Jack Dorsey is lying to you.
That is Gravitas. We let life breathe through our show. Gravitas, the informed show for an intelligent audience.
Hello, welcome to This World. Vladimir Amelyan joins us from Kiev, and he is currently on the front line fighting Russian troops.
We believe that the world should be ruled by democracies.
I was interviewing you on television a couple of weeks back.
That's right.
And you said, if you really want to understand Jerusalem, why don't you come here and see it?
And you came.
Here I am.
Mass shooting after mass shooting after mass shooting. Why this cannot be fixed?
There are 425 million guns in the United States, which is more than the population.
The problem here is Trump has been able to make the argument that this is a political prosecution and that he's being singled out unfairly.
Defend our nation. You are saying we could have a cure for cancer.
We'll have treatments for many cancers in this decade, and they're going to come from India.
Downside is that it could potentially wipe us out. But let's start.
Get you all the major developments from the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas. But first, let's begin with the headlines. Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant tells troops on Gaza border that the order to enter Hamas-run territory will come soon. Says you now see Gaza from afar. Soon you will see it from the inside. Hamas and Putin represent different threats but want to completely annihilate neighboring democracy, says US President Joe Biden in a televised address from Oval Office as he pushes for more aid for Ukraine and Israel. Britain's ruling Conservative Party suffers second damaging by-election defeat to Labour Party, boding ill for Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and his party's chances at next general election. Dozens of Canadian diplomats leave India amid row over murder of Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Move follows India's ultimatum to Canada to withdraw dozens of its diplomatic staff. Formula One drivers express shock as sporting body FIA increases the maximum fine it can hand out in the sport to €1 million.